He told her she was lying, that the baby wasn't his. At 7 months pregnant, he slammed the door in her face and walked away. But less than 24 hours later, the truth came in a doctor's office, a test result that would unravel his identity too. Before we go further, tell us where you're watching from. And if you're new here, click subscribe so you never miss a story that'll keep you up thinking all night. Amara stood barefoot in the rain, the envelope trembling in her hand, heart pounding, mind racing. What will I do now? She'd spent months hoping, waiting, sacrificing, and now, against every instinct to hide or flee, she drove through the night to get that appointment. That test would change everything. They said he never smiled until he met her, and when he did, even the tabloids couldn't look away. Cinderella at the Country Club, they called it. The young designer who stole the heart of Atlanta's most guarded billionaire. But every fairy tale looks perfect, until you see what happens after midnight. Amara Johnson was 28, driven, grounded, a woman who built her life from nothing but grit and grace. She wasn't chasing money or fame, she just wanted to design beautiful spaces, to make something her own. Nathaniel Cross was 40, a man whose fortune was built on steel and silence, a widower for nearly a decade, known for his cold precision and colder eyes. When their paths crossed at a charity gala, she laughed at one of his dry, awkward jokes, and something cracked in him. For the first time in years, he felt alive again. She thought she'd found love, he thought he'd found redemption. But not everyone celebrated their story. His mother never bothered to hide her contempt. "She's not our kind, Nathaniel." Those words cut through dinners like glass, spoken with the kind of venom that wears pearls. The staff whispered when she passed. The florist forgot her favorite lilies, little things that made her feel smaller in a house that was never truly hers. Still, she stayed, because love, real love, isn't built on comfort. It's built on hope. So when she discovered she was pregnant, she wanted to believe it would heal everything between them. She imagined the sound of a baby's laughter echoing through the marble halls. Nathaniel smiled that night, really smiled, and told her he'd always wanted a daughter. For a while it felt like peace. He attended doctor visits, picked out colors for the nursery, and promised her the world. But peace doesn't last long in places built on pride. His lawyers came one morning with papers, a prenuptial clause she'd never seen before, hidden deep within pages she'd trusted him to explain. It stated that if she bore a child proven not to be his, she'd lose everything: the house, the business he helped her start, even her own savings. At first, she laughed it off. "That's never going to matter," she said, brushing it aside like a joke. But something in his eyes told her the clause wasn't just business, it was doubt. And from that moment the air between them began to change. He became distant, colder, calls unanswered, dinners quiet. His mother smiled more often now, as if waiting for a storm she already knew was coming. Then one morning, Amara found herself sitting in her car outside the hospital, hands trembling around an ultrasound photo. The doctor had called earlier with something urgent, something they needed to discuss in person. She didn't know that appointment would hold the key to everything, to the truth that would shatter not just her world, but his. Because behind those smiles there was something else, something she wouldn't see until it was far too late. When people start doubting your worth, the silence hurts louder than their words. After the pregnancy announcement, Nathaniel became someone Amara barely recognized. The man who once traced circles on her belly while whispering baby names now spent nights locked away in his office, the glow of his computer screen flickering like a wall between them. He stopped asking about the doctor visits. He stopped looking her in the eye. At first she blamed the stress, the business, the endless board meetings. But deep down, she could feel it. Something in him had shifted. Then the messages began. Anonymous numbers. Short, cruel sentences that cut through her peace. "He's not the father. You should have told him the truth. He deserves better." She tried to ignore them, deleting each one, pretending they didn't matter. But Nathaniel's expression told her he'd seen them too. His lawyer started visiting the house more often, always when she was out, always leaving with thick envelopes and hushed goodbyes. One afternoon, Amara overheard fragments of a conversation she was never meant to hear, words like paternity, test results, and damage control. Her hands shook as she set the dinner table that night, waiting for Nathaniel to come home. When he finally did, he barely looked at her. He just sat down, ate in silence, and left his untouched glass of wine behind, the same wine they'd toasted with when they found out she was expecting. A week later, her credit card stopped working, her bank account frozen. The business she'd poured her soul into, suddenly under financial review. She called the bank, confused, embarrassed, and all they said was, "You'll have to speak with Mr. Cross's office." That night, she confronted him. "What's happening, Nathaniel?" she asked. He didn't answer. He just stared at her, jaw tight, eyes hard. "You should have told me the truth, Amara." Her heart dropped. The truth about what? But he turned away, leaving her in the silence of a mansion that no longer felt like home. Days passed in a fog of confusion and fear. She felt the house watching her, the staff avoiding her gaze, the whispers behind closed doors. And then came the gala. She showed up, trying to prove she still belonged, wearing the same red dress he once said made her look like fire. But even fire can't warm a room full of frost. As she stood by the champagne table, she heard two women murmuring behind her. "Did you hear about the DNA results? Poor thing doesn't even know yet." Her fingers went numb. She wanted to turn around, to demand answers, but her throat closed up. Every laugh, every clink of glass around her sounded like an echo of betrayal. She left early that night, driving home through the rain, her reflection in the windshield a blur of fear and disbelief. When she finally stepped into the quiet house, something caught her eye. The nursery door, usually left open, was locked. She tried the handle once, twice. Nothing. The key she always used was gone. She pressed her ear to the door, her pulse quickening, and in that moment she realized she had no idea what he was hiding behind it. Sometimes the people you'd take a bullet for are the ones pulling the trigger. That night, Amara dressed carefully for the family dinner, trying to look composed, radiant, unbothered. She thought maybe, if she smiled enough, if she showed them she still believed in them, things could somehow go back to normal. But the moment she walked into that dining room, she knew peace wasn't on the menu. The air was thick with quiet judgment. His mother's lips curled in polite cruelty. His sister wouldn't even meet her eyes. Nathaniel sat at the head of the long mahogany table, his expression unreadable, calm, distant, dangerous. For a while the conversation danced around small talk, business deals, charity galas, vacation plans. Then his mother said it. "We just want the truth, Nathaniel. You deserve that." He set his wineglass down with a soft click, the kind of sound that somehow filled the entire room. Then he looked straight at Amara. "Tell them," he said. "Tell them who the real father is." Her breath caught. The room tilted. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. But he kept going, his voice rising, his words sharp and deliberate. "You lied to me. You used me. You thought I wouldn't find out?" He pulled out a folded paper, a printed email with lines highlighted. She couldn't even read it through the tears welling in her eyes, but she saw the words paternity test and not a match. His family gasped. Phones came out. His mother smiled, satisfied. Amara's voice broke. "Nathaniel, that's not—" But before she could finish, he stood and pointed toward the door. "Get out." She looked around, waiting for someone to speak, to say this had gone too far. No one did. She left that mansion barefoot, clutching her small bag and the ultrasound photo like they were the only things keeping her alive. The rain came down hard, soaking through her dress, each drop colder than the last words he'd spoken. "You made your choice, Amara. Now live with it." She didn't remember much of the drive, just headlights, tears, and the dull ache of disbelief. She ended up at a roadside motel just outside the city. The wallpaper peeled in corners, the sheets smelled faintly of bleach, and the vending machine outside hummed through the night. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the ultrasound. The little heartbeat she'd heard just a week ago, the only proof she wasn't as alone as she felt. Her phone buzzed. It was Lydia, her best friend, the only one who'd stayed close despite Nathaniel's world trying to push her away. Lydia didn't ask what happened. She just said, "I'm coming to you. Don't move." Within an hour she was there with warm food, dry clothes, and the kind of hug that says everything words can't. They talked through the night, piecing together fragments of what might have gone wrong. And when morning came, Lydia held Amara's hand and said, "You need to go to your appointment today. The doctor called yesterday, said it was important." Amara almost canceled it. She was exhausted, numb, humiliated. But something in Lydia's eyes, that quiet urgency, told her she had to go, that this appointment wasn't just about her baby's health. It was about something much deeper, something Nathaniel had known all along but never told her, because that doctor's appointment wasn't just about her baby. It was about a secret Nathaniel never wanted anyone to find out. In that moment, Amara realized it wasn't her he didn't trust. It was himself. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, the kind of place where time felt slower, where every second sat heavy with questions no one wanted to ask. Amara sat quietly, one hand over her belly, the other clutching the medical file Lydia had helped her retrieve from the receptionist. The doctor, an older woman with kind eyes but a strained expression, called her in sooner than expected. The moment Amara stepped into the office, she knew something was off. The doctor didn't smile, didn't make small talk, just stared at the screen for a long moment before saying softly, "Amara, there seems to be a discrepancy in your file." Amara's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" The doctor hesitated, lowering her voice. "Your name is linked to a confidential insurance alert tied to Nathaniel Cross's account." Confused, Amara frowned. "That doesn't make sense. He added me months ago." The doctor nodded. "I know, but that's not the issue. The alert isn't just for you." She turned the screen slightly, revealing a list Amara couldn't fully comprehend at first. 2 entries, both marked active, one under Amara Johnson, 7 months along, and another under a name she didn't recognize, 5 months pregnant. Both filed under the same insurance profile. Her mouth went dry. "There must be a mistake," she whispered. But the doctor shook her head gently. "No, Amara, it's verified through his coverage. It seems Nathaniel is the listed partner on both cases." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the rhythmic ticking of a wall clock, marking every heartbeat she tried to steady. She wanted to scream, to cry, to laugh at how absurd it all sounded. But all that came out was a whisper. "So that's why he—" The doctor nodded slowly. "It appears he requested both paternity confirmations within the same week." Her vision blurred. Everything made sense now. The distance, the accusations, the whispers, the sudden cruelty. He wasn't protecting himself from her. He was hiding something that could destroy him. She clutched her belly, tears sliding down silently, not just from heartbreak, but from the sheer weight of betrayal. He had looked her in the eyes and called her unfaithful, all while carrying the kind of secret that tore entire lives apart. Lydia found her sitting in the clinic parking lot, staring blankly at the rain hitting the windshield. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. Amara didn't answer. She just handed Lydia the printout, her hands shaking. Lydia's eyes widened as she read the second name. Her lips parted, barely forming the words, "Oh my God." Because the other woman? She wasn't a stranger. She was closer than anyone could have imagined. The other woman was Emily, Nathaniel's secretary. The same woman who greeted Amara every morning with a polite smile, who brought her coffee with perfectly measured sugar, who had been working in that house long before Amara ever stepped through its gates. For months, Amara had barely noticed her, just another quiet presence in the background of Nathaniel's empire. But now everything clicked. The hushed phone calls, the glances exchanged in hallways, the sudden loyalty Nathaniel's staff showed to her. Emily wasn't just an employee. She was the second name on that medical record. Amara learned from Lydia that Emily had been living in the guest house, a place Nathaniel claimed he used for out-of-town clients or family friends. The truth hit like ice in her veins. All this time, the woman he swore loyalty to had been living just a few steps away, and worse, she was carrying his child too. Nathaniel had promised Emily money, a new car, and a life far away when everything was handled. But what he didn't know was that Emily had started recording their conversations. Every whispered argument, every promise he made, every cruel plan to make Amara look like the liar. She was afraid of him, but she was also afraid of being discarded once she served her purpose. 2 nights later, Amara returned to the mansion quietly, under the cover of darkness. She still had her old security code. She parked behind the garden and waited for the guards to switch shifts. The house loomed above her like a ghost of her past life. Once her home, now a monument to deceit. She crept toward the guest house, her heart pounding, her breath shallow. When Emily opened the door, her face went pale. For a long second, neither woman spoke. Then Amara said softly, "You're 5 months along." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She didn't deny it. She simply nodded and stepped aside. Inside, the guest house was small but warm. A soft glow of lamps, faint traces of baby clothes folded neatly on a chair. Emily sat down, her voice trembling. "He told me you were using him, that you were seeing someone else. He said if I helped him prove it, he'd take care of me." Amara's hands clenched. "So you helped him ruin me?" Emily shook her head desperately. "I didn't know what he was really planning until it was too late. He made me sign fake documents, medical forms, financial transfers, to make it look like you were lying about everything. He even said he'd have me arrested if I talked." Amara could barely breathe. The betrayal ran deeper than she could have imagined, but beneath the guilt, she saw something else in Emily's eyes, fear and regret. "I want to make it right," Emily whispered. "I have recordings, Amara, proof that he planned this, that he never wanted either of us to talk." She opened a small folder from her drawer, revealing a flash drive. "He doesn't know I kept backups. I was going to leave, but I'm scared." Amara's heart pounded with a new kind of strength, not anger, but resolve. "Then we'll expose him," she said, "together." Emily hesitated, glancing toward the window as though the mansion itself could hear her. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He's already watching us. He knows I've been nervous. If he finds out I talked to you—" Amara stood, her voice firm but quiet. "Then we don't wait. We do it tonight." But what neither woman realized was that Nathaniel already suspected them. Cameras had been installed in the guest house weeks earlier. He'd seen the lights turn on. He'd watched them meet. And in that moment, as Amara clutched the flash drive like her last lifeline, Nathaniel was already on his way back from the city, furious, prepared to silence anyone who dared threaten his perfect public image. Because Nathaniel wasn't about to let either woman ruin the empire he'd built, or the reputation he'd killed to protect. When lies come dressed as truth, even innocence starts to look guilty. Nathaniel moved fast, faster than either woman could have imagined. Within days, Amara received a cease and desist letter from his lawyers, warning her to stay silent or face defamation charges. Emily got one too, threatening to revoke her medical insurance and terminate her employment if she spoke a single word. Nathaniel's power reached everywhere: the media, the banks, even the hospital that once treated Amara with kindness. Overnight, headlines shifted. Her face appeared on gossip blogs, painted as a manipulative social climber. Gold digger exposed. Designer scams billionaire with fake pregnancy. The same people who once envied her now tore her apart online. their words crueler than any wound. Amara tried to stay calm, but the stress began to crush her. One night, while trying to sleep at Lydia's apartment, a sharp pain shot through her stomach. Panic flooded the room as Lydia rushed her to the hospital. The monitors beeped steadily, the fluorescent lights glaring down as the doctors whispered words she barely understood. Stress-induced contractions. We need to keep her stable. Lying there, with wires attached to her, she felt smaller than ever, trapped between heartbreak and survival. Lydia never left her side. She held her hand through every contraction, whispering, "You're not crazy, Amara. He did this." But Lydia wasn't just comforting her. She was digging. She had always been sharper than she let on, and something about the DNA results gnawed at her. The timing, the paperwork, the signatures, none of it felt right. When Amara finally fell asleep, Lydia slipped out and drove straight to the clinic. She used her position as a journalist to request a copy of the report, the same one Nathaniel had used to accuse Amara of infidelity. It took hours and a few phone calls, but what she uncovered made her blood run cold. The records had been tampered with. The lab technician's name had been replaced. The digital timestamp didn't match the day the test was supposedly run, and buried deep in the metadata was a note, a user ID tied to Nathaniel's personal assistant. Lydia's instincts kicked in. She traced the ID through internal documents, connecting it to a recent wire transfer, $50,000, paid just 2 days before the test results were sent to Nathaniel's lawyer. Her hands trembled as she printed everything. Proof. Undeniable proof that Amara had never lied. The betrayal wasn't hers to bear. It was his. But even as she packed the files into a folder, a chill ran down her spine. Because someone else already knew what she'd found. The same assistant who forged the documents had been watching her searches remotely, his alerts pinging on a secure line that fed directly back to Nathaniel's security team. By the time Lydia stepped out of the clinic, the parking lot lights flickered behind her. A dark sedan sat idling near the exit, windows tinted, engine humming low. She didn't think much of it at first, until it started following her. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her heartbeat thundering as she turned onto the empty road. The folder sat beside her, evidence strong enough to destroy a billionaire. But as the headlights loomed closer in her rearview mirror, one terrifying thought pulsed in her mind. The proof she found could destroy Nathaniel Cross, or get her killed. The truth didn't just set her free, it burned down everything that held her captive. The night Lydia disappeared, Amara knew something had gone terribly wrong. Her calls went straight to voicemail, her texts unread. Hours later, an envelope arrived at Lydia's apartment door. No return address, just her name written in shaky ink. Inside was a flash drive. Amara plugged it in, and there it was. Every document, every audio file, every recording Emily had risked her life to save. Proof that Nathaniel's assistant had forged the DNA test. Proof that the real results had been buried under lies and money. The truth was no longer a secret. It was a weapon. With Emily's help, Amara sent the files to every major news outlet in Atlanta. Within hours, the story broke. Forgery scandal in Cross Industries. Billionaire lied about paternity test to protect fortune. The leaked DNA report left no room for denial. Nathaniel Cross was, without question, the father of Amara's unborn child. The empire he built on control and fear began to crumble before sunrise. His company's stock crashed. Investors fled. The board of directors called an emergency meeting, and by the end of that day, Nathaniel was forced to resign. Cameras followed him as he left his office. No chauffeur, no entourage, just a man stripped of power, hiding behind dark glasses. Reporters crowded outside the mansion gates, shouting questions he refused to answer. His mother, once so proud of the name she guarded, refused to open the door to the press. And Emily, the woman he had used, manipulated, and discarded, released one final recording to the world, Nathaniel admitting he'd forged the test to protect his reputation. It played on every major network, his voice cold and steady as he said, "No one will ever believe her." But the world did. For the first time, they believed Amara. She didn't celebrate, though. There was no joy in watching a man destroy himself. Just relief and a quiet kind of peace. Weeks later, she went into labor at dawn. Lydia, though still missing, had given her the courage to face it alone. The hospital room was calm, sunlight spilling through the blinds, the rhythmic sound of a monitor syncing with her heartbeat. After hours of pain and tears, she held her son for the first time, small, perfect, breathing softly against her chest. She whispered, "You're safe now. No one can hurt us anymore." Outside, the city buzzed with the chaos of Nathaniel's downfall, the cameras, the lawsuits, the endless noise. But inside that quiet room, it was just her and her child. No more lies, no more fear, just the fragile beauty of a new beginning born from everything she'd lost. And as she looked into her baby's eyes, she understood something Nathaniel never could. That real power doesn't come from money or control. It comes from surviving what was meant to break you. The truth didn't just set her free. It burned down everything that once held her captive. She thought she'd lost everything that night he threw her out. But in truth, that was the night she started to find herself. Months passed, and the world slowly stopped whispering her name like it was a scandal, and started saying it like it was a story of strength. Amara Johnson, once labeled a liar, became a symbol of truth and resilience. She poured every ounce of pain, every sleepless night, into rebuilding her life from scratch. With the little money she had left, and the help of a few women who believed in her, she opened a small design studio. But it wasn't just any firm. She called it Second Chance Designs. Its mission was simple: to employ and support single mothers who'd been abandoned, silenced, or underestimated. What began as a quiet dream in a rented workspace grew into a movement. Clients came not just for her art, but for her heart. Every project she completed carried pieces of her story. Bold, imperfect, honest. The same media that once tore her apart now wanted her on morning shows and magazine covers. She didn't gloat. She spoke with grace, always reminding the world that truth isn't about revenge, it's about freedom. "They can take your reputation," she once said in an interview, "but they can't take your soul unless you hand it to them." Her words spread across social media, turning into a rallying cry for women everywhere. Meanwhile, Nathaniel's world continued to unravel. His businesses sold off, his name removed from corporate boards. His mansion, once a fortress, stood quiet and empty, the gates rusting, the windows shuttered. Yet even then he refused to let go. Months after his resignation, he filed for custody of Amara's son, claiming he wanted to make things right. But the court saw through it. The judge read the evidence, the forged reports, the recordings, and stripped him of any parental rights. His empire was gone, his power useless. And in that courtroom, for the first time, Nathaniel looked small, a man undone by his own deceit. Amara didn't gloat or celebrate. She simply held her son close, kissed his forehead, and walked out of that courthouse into the sunlight. The same woman who had once stood barefoot in the rain, broken and humiliated, now stood tall, a mother, a survivor, a creator of her own destiny. Life wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Every evening she'd close her studio early, tuck her baby boy into bed and watch him sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling with the peace she fought so hard to earn. She'd whisper softly, "You'll never have to question your worth the way I did." Her story became more than a scandal or a survival tale. It became a reminder that sometimes the worst endings are only the beginnings of something far greater. And as for Nathaniel, his story didn't end where you think. Sometimes the justice we pray for doesn't come from the courtroom. It comes when truth walks in quietly, and karma shows up right on time. Months after the custody battle, Nathaniel's past finally caught up with him. Federal agents arrived at his estate at dawn, silent, methodical, unbothered by his name or money. The same falsified insurance files he once used to destroy Amara were now the very evidence that destroyed him. As the headlines read, "Former billionaire arrested for corporate fraud," Amara didn't celebrate. She simply smiled faintly, not out of vengeance, but relief. Because she'd learned something far greater than revenge, that peace feels better than power ever will. The mansion where she once cried alone now belonged to the bank, but her small studio, it buzzed with life, laughter, hope, and women building something real. The universe had balanced itself in the quietest, most poetic way, and as she rocked her baby to sleep that night, she whispered, "We made it." Because she did, and maybe so did every woman who ever watched her story and saw a piece of themselves in it. What would you have done in Amara's place? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. I read every story, and if this story hit home, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. We share powerful stories like this every week, because sometimes the truth doesn't roar, it whispers right before karma knocks.